Welcome back, warrior. Okay, we're going to be reading the first book of Samuel, chapter 1. And it's one of my favorite stories because I can relate so much. So Hannah prays for a son and vows to give him to the Lord. Eli, the priest, blesses her. Samuel is born. Hannah loans him to the Lord. Okay. So some commentary from Redheaded Hostess is how wonderful that Samuel's story begins with his faithful mother. Her story begins with her struggle of being barren, and she will show us how heart-wrenching that trial was for her and how she felt alone and desperate year after year. Imagine if she could have just known at the time that she would give birth to a son that would become a prophet. And imagine if she could have known that all of the history's eyes were upon her. But she didn't know. And for a long time, she was just another woman whose dearest desires were not coming to pass. So the record opens right in the middle of Hannah's trial. All right, so here we go. Verse 1. Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of Mount Ephraim. I don't know. And his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, and the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other, Penina. And Penina had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Penina. Why do I not remember her name ever? Okay, Penina his wife, and because I relate to the other gal, right? Penina his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But to Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. Okay, so I want to focus on this a little bit, only because I know what this is like to feel like you're not able to have kids and you really want kids. But I never noticed this line here in verse 6. It says, and so the Lord had shut up her womb. And it's funny because I feel like I know that sometimes the Lord can do things like shutting up our womb. But for the most part, I do believe that it's not the Lord trying to cause us all of our problems. It's like when Hank Smith says there's trials that we that we create for ourselves, and there's trials that other people create for ourselves, and then there are trials that the Lord creates. And I feel like I create my own trials and for myself enough that the Lord maybe doesn't even have to contribute, right? Anyway, and so because of my poor choices. And so, but I do believe that children can come and it is the Lord's decision. But at the same time, I do feel like it is up to us to make sure that our bodies are ready and able to have children. And so, but because I have experienced infertility and because I have seen children born, and they call them dumpster babies, like because I have seen both, it's like I know that the Lord has a plan for all of these children, and it's not like he is trying so hard to give us like the worst possible scenario, right? So anyway, So there's that. And then, but then here in verse 6, he says that her adversary also provoked her sore. And I didn't notice it before, but it's so true. Satan is there and he's going to make us fret. Like, why do we fret, and why do we have all this anxiety and suffering, and triggers and trauma? All because Satan is there and tempting us with all of those sad things, right? And tempting us to be sad and to not have hope and to blame the Lord and to do all these, you know what I mean? Like, Satan is there and he's going to make whatever our struggle is even worse, because he's going to tempt us with all his whispers about us not being enough. And so because the Lord, and then he's just going to make things worse. He's just going to escalate things. And so I didn't ever realize that verse existed, but I love that is there to help us remember, like, chaos and worry and all that does not come from the Lord. The Lord is not trying to get us to worry about stuff, but Satan is. He's the one that causes the chaos in our hearts and in our minds. Anyway, and then verse 7, and as he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore she wept and did not eat. Okay, so she was so sad. And even when she went to the temple, it says that she felt that torture from the adversary. And that she felt so tortured that she didn't even eat, right? So it's probably like this cycle where it's like, you know, you're trying to get better, you're trying to eat healthy, you're trying to do those things, getting your body prepared for a baby. But then because you don't have one every month, then you don't eat and you get sad and and I'm reading these books. One of them is called The Body Keeps the Score, and then the other one is The Biology of Trauma. And our bodies, when they are in that fight, flight, or freeze, cannot produce babies. Like, it just does. It's not going to happen, especially if we have like autoimmune diseases or like autoimmune problems, because we are so worried and so anxious and so our body can retain that, and it, instead of being in relax, produce mode, then we're in like the stop everything from growing mode, because we're just in survival. Now, that being said, there are still women who can get pregnant during those times. And that's the time when I'm like, see, the Lord did that on purpose. And so it's like, I know he has a plan for all of us when he sends his children down to earth. And so anyway, it's just one of those things. And so I love that they put this in here, because she had so much pain that she didn't eat. And sometimes when we experience that kind of trauma or that kind of sadness or despair, we don't eat. And then verse 8, then said Elkanah, her husband, to her, Hannah, why weepest thou? Right? Like, and he's probably like so insensitive, because of course she's been crying and doing this all the time. And so he's like asking why she's crying, which he would of course know why she's crying, but I'm guessing the scriptures just like had to include it, because that's what husbands do. Why are you crying? More like, why are you crying this time, right? And then he says, and why eatest thou not? It's like, husbands just don't get it, Plus he had all these other kids. He probably doesn't get the fact that like she wants kids, and he's probably like, I don't need more kids. I have so many already from this other gal, right? But that's not what Hannah's thinking. And then he says, and why is thy heart grieved? Of course, then we have the husband line. Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? That's super insensitive, right? Like, what? He's like, aren't I better than 10 sons to you? Like, because I'm your husband, right? And only if you've experienced infertility do you get this on so many levels, right? It's like, no, our husband is different than what we want as a child. Like, we want a child. Our husband is a different kind of love than a child love, like than being a mom. And so, no, our husband cannot be better than 10 sons because it's totally different. It's like, do you like fruit? Yes, you love fruit, right? But it fills a completely different purpose in your life. Then it's like, do you love candy or do you love chocolate? It's like, yeah, I love both. And it's like, you don't want to do without either one because you love both of them. And it's like, but you need one and you need the other to survive, right? Now, I know I'm giving chocolate as a bad example, but because you probably don't need chocolate. I could have said vegetables, right? But anyway, but then some people would be like, I don't like veggies. Anyway, so here we go. So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh and after they had drunk. Now Eli, the priest, sat upon a seat by a post of the temple of the Lord. Okay, so no one knows how sad Hannah is. And they're all just eating and drinking and doing their biz while she's just sad and can't eat, right? And she was in bitterness of soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. And she vowed a vow. Okay, now this is awesome. I think we all in our pain do these, make these vows or separate covenants, right? Because you have like your baptismal covenants and then you have like your temple covenants. And then you have these extra promises or covenants that you make with the Lord that nobody else knows, right? They're like separate from the official covenants that, you make that are covenants that help you become exalted, right? And return to live with Heavenly Father. And then she created a new vow or a new covenant separate from those. And this is what it was. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid and remember me and not forget thine handmaid. She says, remember me because she feels forgotten, because it's like everybody else has a child. How come I can't get a child? So it feels like you're forgotten, right? Like everybody's handing out all these children and you feel forgotten. It makes sense to me. And not forget thine handmaid. But of course, children are not like things to be possessed, right? But still, it feels like that. And it also feels like you're not enough. Like the Lord's like, oh, you're not a good enough parent, but yet we'll send you we'll send babies to the dumpster because you're not good enough. Like, right? That's what Satan's telling people. It's like who struggle with infertility. Like that's what I felt. It was like, oh, I'm not good enough to be a mom. So you're going to let them go be dumpster babies? That's not cool. And so those are the feelings and emotions that we're dealing with here with Hannah also. Because I'm sure she knows of parents who were not good or of parents who gave away their babies or whatever. You know what I mean? And so she's like, and remember me and not forget thine handmaid. But wilt give unto thine handmaid a man-child. Then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. So Eli was a prophet, and he heard her prayer. And now Hannah spake in her heart. Now Hannah, she spake in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. So, some commentary here. So, what part of your life... Hold on, wait. Let me make sure I know where I'm at. Okay, we're on verse 14. Okay, what part of your life could a story begin that would capture a fiery furnace you have endured? With Hannah, we learn that she was married to a good and faithful man named Elkanah. And we learn that every year he took his family up to the city of Shiloh to worship. At this time, so you know what? That would also be really hard because Shiloh, like if they go once a year, it's like, okay, hopefully at some point in time, she'll be able to come back and be pregnant or have a kid. But every time she comes back and she doesn't have anybody with her, she doesn't have a child. And so she has to tell everyone else, because I'm sure that there's those other insensitive people who are like, hey, when are you going to get pregnant? Right? And it's like, hey, listen, we're trying. I remember like we started telling people like, wait, hey, well, if you want to start saving money, because we got to do these infertility treatments, so you guys can contribute, because it's so expensive to try to go through fertility treatments. And so that was what we would say. I can't tell you how many of my friends, they meant well, but they would be like, oh, when are you getting pregnant? Or even worse, when I felt really bloated or ate too much the day before at church, they'd be like, are you pregnant? And I'm like, nope, I just ate probably a little too much and my stomach distended, right? And it's like, that they mean well and that they're trying to be excited with you and for you, but you're just like, no, not this time. So yeah, don't guess the whole like, if a woman is pregnant, just forget it. Like, do not say it to her. At least maybe ask the husband or somebody else, but not her. Anyway, so every year she would have to go back, and no wonder she was just extra sad at this time of year, at this situation, because she just had to keep coming back to the same old people and telling them like, still, I have no babies, and literally trying, right? But they didn't have that much courage back then, I don't think, to say like all these things that I'm saying, because they were more reserved and respected people more. I don't know. But like, I know that's what I was getting sassy with people, Anyway, so it says at this time, Shiloh was the city where the tabernacle had been permanently put up, and it was in the land of Ephraim. Elkanah had another wife named Peninnah, and she was not barren. Peninnah's ability to have children provoked Hannah sore to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb, right? So year by year, when Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, she suffered even more. So Hannah suffered all year long as she waited to have children, but going to the temple would heighten her suffering, right? Because this is what I was saying, to the point that she would weep and refuse to eat, right? And we would refuse to eat because we're like, well, now, like, people are asking me if I'm pregnant, and I'm not, so clearly I need to stop eating so that I don't get so big that people keep asking me. So there's that too. Isn't it the worst? Satan's the worst. So we can imagine that this would be a difficult trial on any day, but perhaps her daily life could keep her busy and distracted. However, when you come to the temple and are gathered as a family and partaking of sacrificial meal together, the spotlight was on the thing she wanted the most, but did not yet have. Elkanah loved his wife, and when he offered a sacrifice, he would give her a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah. Elkanah knew Hannah's suffering, and he sought to comfort her by saying, of course, the most insensitive comment from a husband. Am I not better to thee than 10 sons? Well, yeah, sure. It's like, but he seemed to be a good guy, right? Like, we're not trying to say he was bad, but it's just like husbands, they don't get it, right? Because once you become a wife, you want to have kids. It's just like, that was what you've been waiting for your whole life till that point, right? I mean, some women don't want kids, and that's fine. But it seems like she really did. It seems like the women who really want kids don't get the kids. And all these women who don't want kids probably could have a kid tomorrow if they wanted, Okay. So then the Israelites would give an offering, and that would become a sacred sacrificial meal in which the whole family partook. Hannah arose after the meal, and then she went to pray, and she made that separate promise or covenant with the Lord that she would dedicate her son to the Lord, right? And it is possible that this prayer was guided by the Spirit, for that is exactly what Samuel would need, and this mother was being prepared and led at this moment. But we must remember that we are only coming in and hearing this single prayer. There would have been many prayers of pleading before this, but this prayer gave this vow, and that is why it is recorded, and Hannah will keep her vow. right? Like how many of us make those promises too? I promise, help me find a job, and I promise blah, 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 or help me. There's all those separate covenants we make with God. And how many times do we keep them, and how many times do we not keep them, right? And then we have to repent of the ones we didn't keep, because clearly we got what we wanted, but we did not keep our promise, and that's not cool either. Okay, so then the high priest was named Eli. The high priest would sit on a chair at certain points in order to fulfill different responsibilities he held. While he was there, he saw Hannah and misjudged her as a woman who was crying and drunk. And Hannah corrected him and said she was only a woman of a sorrowful spirit. Okay, so it's coming. So verse 14, and Eli said unto her, how long wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. So many insensitive people around here, huh? And Hannah answered and said, no, my Lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. But when we are crying and desperately crying with the ugly cry, we can look like we are drunk. Verse 16, count not thine handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hitherto. Then Eli answered and said, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. And she said, let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. So she got to talk to the priest, and she didn't have an attitude with the priest. Luckily, hopefully I wouldn't have had an attitude with the priest either. But yeah, so she was able to find that peace, right? And it's awesome that she was able to go say the prayers that she needed to say, feel all her feelings, cry. And then, sometimes we just need to let it out and to find peace, right? And he said, go in peace. Right? And so maybe the added go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. Maybe that extra line helped her feel that extra peace, because she felt like she was heard, even though she didn't say the words out loud, maybe, because that's what she said. Okay, so verse 19, and they rose up in the morning early and worshiped before the Lord, and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son, and called his name Samuel, saying, because I have asked him of the Lord. Isn't that a cute name? Okay, and the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. Okay, so now Hannah has a child, and this is awesome because she gets to go back and she'll have a kid, right? But Hannah went not up, for she said unto her husband, I will not go up until the child be weaned, and then I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord and there abide forever. And so she was trying to take advantage of the nursing stage of her kid, so that then she would be able to give him to the priest, so that he could become the next prophet. So I do love that she was like, no, I'm not coming up until he's weaned. I wonder if Samuel was a kid who had been nursed the longest out of all history, right? Because she was probably trying to take advantage of every moment she could have with him without giving him up. Because I remember those first stages, when they're like little babies, you're just like, oh, I cannot leave them alone ever. And finding a babysitter to go on date night was the hardest thing. So I can't even imagine what she did after he was done breastfeeding, just giving him to the Lord, just gave him to the Lord. I love it. She's such a good example. Okay, so verse 23. And Elkanah, her husband, said unto her, do what seemeth thee good. Tarry until thou have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode and gave her son suck until she weaned him. And when she had weaned him, which I don't know how much time that is, but it's like the next line, she took him up with her with 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. So he was young. We don't know how old. Okay. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here, praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition, which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshipped the Lord there. Oof, so much emotion on this one. It's so interesting because I got to be Hannah 3 times. Because our kids were so far apart that I experienced secondary infertility, which is after you have one. So I had infertility for so long. And then I had secondary infertility because I wanted more kids than one and couldn't have more kids. So then 5 years later, we finally had another one after 4 IUIs. So, and then we got our middle child. And then we tried more stuff after that. And wasn't for another 7 years that we got our last miracle baby. So all of our babies are miracle babies. I mean, all babies are miracles, right? But for us, I struggle with that infertility. Every single baby. I guess, what is it? Secondary infertility and then 3rd tier infertility. I don't know what it's called when you want to have a 3rd kid and you can't. And we did 2 rounds of IVF for our 3rd child and did not work because they ended in early miscarriages. And so then we were like, okay, I guess we're not going to have another baby. And then we did 2 years later after that. And so they're all our miracles. So I can relate to Hannah's story so much. The woman with the issue of blood, I relate. And then Hannah's story, I relate so much. So I am grateful for these stories in the Bible. Okay, so the story continues that the Lord remembered her and she conceived and bore a son named Samuel. So this is commentary. When it was time for Elkanah and his family to go again to the yearly sacrifice, Hannah didn't go up. She intended to keep her vow, and the next time she would go to the temple was when she was taking Samuel, that he may appear before the Lord and there abide forever. But she could not do this until he was weaned, which for Hebrew mothers typically meant about 3 years. Elkanah agreed, and when she had weaned Samuel, she took him up. With 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour. The 3 bullocks were likely intended for the 3 different offerings, maybe that they missed, and the flour was offered with each bullock. Although 3 bullocks were taken, one in particular is mentioned in verse 25, and this is likely because it was a sacrifice given along with the presentation of Samuel, while the other 2 did not need mentioning because they were associated with the yearly sacrifice. These verses are hard to imagine. By the way, our kids are all weaned at like the 1 year mark or sooner. And so 3 years seems like a lot. But I totally would have done it if that's the kind of promise that was happening for me, you know? And then let's see. These verses are hard to imagine because of the emotions Hannah must have been feeling at this moment. The very thing she hoped for, a son, she was now giving over to the high priest. How could she let go of her dear Samuel at this moment, right? Because they're so precious. It's too bad she didn't give him up when they're teenagers and when they want cell phones, and just be like, oh, actually, you got to go live with the priest now. That would probably turn out better. Anyway, so how could she let go of her dear Samuel at this moment when he's so little and sweet, right? And we will see in the next chapter that it was her faith in the Lord that strengthened her. Her faith helped her keep her vow. And now she was not only giving Samuel to the tabernacle, but she was giving a prophet to Israel. Oof, that's heavy, right? Imagine how full Hannah's heart must have been when she approached Eli and said, I am the woman. And I did read it with emotion. That stood by thee here, praying unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. Now, so I think it's also interesting, like maybe Eli did not realize that he was about to get a kid. Because I'm just thinking, this bachelor, who knows if he has other kids? I don't know yet. Maybe he has other kids. But to me, it seems like he's, bachelor, maybe not even married. I don't know. I don't know these details. Maybe they will be revealed to us. But I feel like I'm reading this section for the first time, even though I have read it before. So some details I forget. Like I really like this story of Hannah, but I forget other details. Anyway, so I wonder if he originally was like, wait, what? You promised to bring a kid to me? I feel like I should have been consulted, right? I wonder if he at all thought like, what am I going to do with this guy? How am I supposed to feed him and stuff, right? Like, or if he was like super grateful. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But, bachelor guy, possibly bachelor guy gets a kid. If he's not a bachelor and he has had kids or has kids, he'd probably be like, dude, I already have kids. Like, why are we bringing this other child to me? So anyway, I'm just totally speculating this part, but I'm like having fun with it because I'm like, oh yeah, this guy was like, well, okay, I guess if you want to bring your kid to me, sounds good. You said, you promised. So I'm hoping he was really respectful and like was super excited to have Samuel, and hopefully Samuel didn't feel like he was a burden, because that would be so sad for any child to feel like they're a burden. Okay, so President Ezra Taft Benson says this. Says husbands and wives as co-creators should eagerly and prayerfully invite children into their homes. Oh man, I know, right? Then as each child joins their family circle, they can gratefully exclaim as Hannah did, for this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. Isn't that beautiful? A mother praying to bear a child and then giving him to the Lord. Yes, it is. It is so beautiful. President Ezra Taft Benson, Come Listen to a Prophet's Voice, page 27. Okay, so that is it for Samuel chapter 1. And that one took a little longer because we get emotional. And then we have a Read It, Live It. And the Read It, Live It is from Samuel 1 verse 27. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition. Hannah prayed long before she saw the answer, but when the answer came, she gave him back to God. Ooh, love it. Offer him your all. That's true. We need to offer him our all. Okay. Until Samuel chapter 2. Stay strong, warrior.